Begin the current Daf, Masechta Kidushin Daf begin 6 lines down at the top of the Amud, where the Gemara continues in a related discussion for the previous Daf regarding if Mo'is Rishainis, if the first monies were given for Kidushin or not, as we discussed regarding this. What did the father do? Was it Bevigdoi Ba when he was giving her over for the Shivchis? Was that also, did he do an Ishus, or did you say that no, it's nothing to do with him, because it's actually the remaining monies that the Adon does the Yid with? Hagamar continues in a related discussion with that. Turn today's Daf. Some discussing today's Daf are, we continue explaining the halachas of Yid, which is this unique halacha the Torah gives when the father sells his daughter as Amavriya to another Jewish man, that he could go ahead and marry her, or he could give it over to his son. On that, the Gemara discusses regarding that son that could do Yid. The question is, what do you say about a minor? Because we know that in Ishus Lakatan, there's no marriage for a minor. Would you say Yid would be different or not? Also, the Gemara discusses whether Yid is performed using, like we said, Pruta Sha'aleha, the value of her outstanding servitude. In other words, what's still remaining in the servitude, that's the remaining balance is used for the Kidushin. Or do you say, no, Moiser Shainis, the original purchase money, the 6,000, whatever it was that he spent, then that is the Kidushin money, which was from whatever 2 years before, which one is creating the Yid? So in terms of content, today's daf are in Shahais by Yom. What happens, what do you do if, let's say, there's no time during the day left for any monetary value, but still the slavery hasn't ended yet, which is related to the idea we just mentioned. If it's Mois Rishainis or what's still there, could you still do a Yid? What about Dasti Da? Do you need to have her consent, her awareness? And Kitchel Achar, what happens if, let's say, this father, after he had sold her as a shivcha, he goes and mekadosh her to someone else? But obviously that's going to be related to this conversation. Do you say it's Moris Rishainis, then she's already engaged, so to speak, Mafreya, to the other, or would you say it's what's coming, and therefore he could laugh at him and get her engaged to someone else? Masna Mashkaz Batayra, regarding if, let's say, he stipulates that I don't want you to be able to work over here, you could take my daughter as a maidservant, but you cannot marry her. Is that considered stipulating against what the Torah says, and therefore it's not a valid tonight? Meichel Psulim, can you sell your daughter to those who are apostle for her to marry? So you'd say not, because you can't do Yid. Meichel Kraivim, which is also a similar type of a question, she can't marry the relatives. Can you sell the heart as an Amavriya to those relatives? So begin the current Daf Yud Test, 6 lines down at the top of the Amud. The Gemara says, B'lei Rish Lakish. Rish Lakish has the following question regarding this halacha of Yid. As the Torah says, the Torah tells us that he could do Yid, or it says in Shmais Chafal of Test, Vim Livno Yodeno Kamishpat Abanis Yasen. So it's either him or his son. So the question is his son could be, let's say, this 10-year-old boy to marry this 8-year-old Amavriya? So what's the question? On the one hand, B'nai Merachman, the Torah says, yeah, that says the word B'nai, his son, which is B'nai Kaldu, any son, even if he's a minor. Oh, Idilma, maybe no B'nai Dumi Didei. His son has to be similar to him, which is Mahu Gadol, just like he's an adult, B'nai Gadol. Also his son has to be an adult. So what's the halacha? So Amar Reb Zera, he says that Tashma, it's being a raya from the following brisa. The brisa quotes a pasuk of Yikra that talks about adultery. So in the pasuk, it says ish. So it's talking about a man that's going to commit adultery. Who is this? Prat lekatan, excluding a minor, which Taisa says, what do you mean? Even though katan is la bar ancient, who? Why do you need a pasuk for? You need a pasuk to exclude that. You would have thought to say that he would get executed because the woman's getting executed because of him. As a well-known halacha of like the shiur, the woman engaged in bestiality, you kill the animal also because, even though obviously an animal doesn't have free will and is not liable for sins that it does, but since the woman gets killed because of it, so the animal gets killed too. So Tyson says something similar. You would have thought to say that the child gets executed because the woman's getting executed because of him. So I say, no, ish is excluding a cotton, that halach of adultery does not apply to a child. So the pasuk continues. It says, ish, a man, not a child, asher yinefes ish's ish, that commits adultery with a married woman. So it says ish's ish. She has to be the wife of a man. Probably ish's cotton. This excludes that if she's the wife of a child, then the halach of adultery would not apply. Now, says the Gemara, V'yamid miyayid, if you say that this 10-year-old boy, the son of the landowner, could go ahead and do Yid to this girl, what do you mean? Then you do find marriage for a minor. Why would you say it's Ashes Ish Prat Ashes Cotton. Why wouldn't you say that there's a marriage over here, that there is adultery over here? So the Gemara says, wait a second. So what do you want to say? So you want to prove from here that, the minor son cannot do Yid. Then that might come and might like Kra. Then why is the Pasig excluding the Ashes Cotton if there is no Ashes Cotton? It's not feasible. You never have that. So the Gemara now goes the other way, says, okay, so Tifshem Inad Miyayid. So seemingly, you could prove over here that the minor son could do Yid, and the pasuk is just excluding that although you could have the wife of a minor, in that case there will not be the death penalty for that adultery. So the Gemara says, no, it's not a raya. Amar Rav Ashi says, Hacho, but here we're talking about the Yavam ben Tesha Shonim b'Yom Echad. A Yavam, the brother of the man who died without any children, his brother is 9 years old. Haba'al Yavim to Yaskinan, that he went and did Biyah with his sister-in-law, the Amana. Biblically, then there is a zika between this 9-year-old boy, and with that bia, he acquires her to Yarshan her, as the mission teacher Nida Memheim and Alf, that a 9-year-old Yavam acquires the Yavama, because when he's 9 years old, just like a girl at 3 is considered viable for bia, so to a 9-year-old boy is considered viable for bia. So biblically, he will acquire his Yavama. So right, you're saying because of, right, we're saying with Das. Right, you're saying because of Das. You're saying, yeah, I mean, it's a good question. How does he has some Das, he just doesn't have full Das. Right, and what does that mean? Right, exactly. He has to have Das, right, whatever Das he has, he's having. But upon them, that we know that a 9-year-old boy is considered at least a valid bia, at least there's Mekayim the mitzvah of Yibum, and therefore they'll be married. Maybe tak on some level Kenyan, maybe something's lacking. But what would you say, given the since biblically she's fit to him? So you would say so biblically they're married on some level. On some level they did yibum, and so at least is the way the Rashi explains it, and so therefore you'd be liable for Eishasish. Kamash Malan. If that's the case, that we needed to tell you probably Eisha's cotton. When it's a yibum situation of a 10-year-old boy with the 8-year-old Yavama, and then in that situation is when we're telling you, no, if a man's going to commit adultery with this woman, that there's not going to be a chiyuv of misa. But it's not proving anything about yud. It could be that yud requires an adult son. How do you have the nation's cotton? A child can never do marriage. There is a case. There's a case about yibum that there could be ishus. So therefore that could be the case. We didn't prove if yud is lebenei cotton or lebenei gal. So Lamaisa, what's the conclusion? What's the halacha with yud of a cotton? You didn't prove it from this brisa, but what's the halacha? So the Gemara says Tashmat's being a raya clearly from Amar Be'eva Amar B'Yana. He says ein yud ela begadol. Yud is only with an adult, so that clearly answers the question. It cannot be a minor son. And ein yud ela medas. Yud is only with intention, with awareness, with consent. So the Gemara says Tarti. Why do you need both of these statements? They're all one. In other words, since Yid needs Das, so obviously it could only be with a gadol because a child does not have Das. So why would you say both statements? It's redundant. So it says the Gemara, you're right. Matam kamar. It was explaining the reasoning. Matam in Yid begadol. What's the reason why we're saying that Yid is only by a gadol, by an adult? Lafi she'in Yid el madas. Because Yid is only with awareness. And that you only have an adult. So it's explaining. It's saying, why is it? We were saying it's only by a gadol. Why would you say it's only by a gadol? Why? It says, Livnoi Yadena, B'noi could be even the child. Why are you saying it has to be a gadol? That why it's a gadol? Could be Gzeis HaKasiv, could be...
That's what counts as being a gadol.
You're saying that there's no other element to know...
Right. What else could it be?
What else could come when there's a gadol? I hear. Right, you have a gadol without, and therefore. But I'm saying, we're saying if you're saying it's only with a gadol, is shaila is what's the point of saying the reasoning? Maybe unless he's trying to say that we want you to know that das is the underlying reason. So then if you have, let's say, an adult without das, that also maybe wouldn't work. That's we want to tell you the reasoning. Right. So that's one pshat. If you want, you could say that actually it's two different halachas. It's actually not the same thing. There's one halacha only by gadol, and then this that we said that it's only with das. My midas. It's not like we thought to say the man's das. Mitzmidas di da. It's the girl's das. The amavriya's das. That's not the same halacha. We're saying ein yidel begadol is the man, either the father or the son. They have to be an adult, and then the das is actually going on the girl, on amavriya. The Tanya Abaye Bereded Bavo, taught a brayse. It says in the pasuk Ashaloya Oda. It says there in the pasuk, if let's say it was bad in the eyes of a master, and Ashaloya Oda, this is one of those that's mitalamed, mitavav, and mitaalef, how to read it. But the point is Ashaloya Oda that didn't do yid, or to him is yid. Malamish Torach liyada. This teaches that you need to go ahead and either the girsa, some have, it's not liyado, some bring on the side of the Gemara, it's liyado, but it's from the word of das. Well, that's what I'm saying. It's whatever das she has, it's whatever awareness that she's having, that she has to know about it.
You say the same thing about whatever das he has.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Meaning we are kinyanim for a child. In other words, I think there's a Taisam that says that it's not like he has no das at all. Child definitely has some das. There is like levels of das. It just doesn't have a full das for certain halachas. But al kapan, you have to let her know. And hutanila, he taught this brisa, vuamala, and he explained it on his own. That this reasoning, why is it that you have to be liyada to let her know, is b'kedusha yiyud. We're going in the kedushin of yiyud, v'alib d'brisa b'Yehuda. That he says, he says the first monies, meaning that the father had received when he sold her as a slave woman, lovely Kidushin nitnu. Those were not given for Kidushin purposes, and the year is only with the remaining prutus that's still on her contract. So therefore, the father's das that was in the beginning is not effective, because his father had nothing to do with the Kidushin. And if the man, the landowner, the lord, or whatever, his son, is not going to notify her for her to receive it, then there wouldn't be any Kidushin, because it has to be das of the Isha. So therefore, that's what this halacha of this answer was saying, that Ein Yirel Midas is the girl's das because of Kidushin, because Kidushin is not what was the first monies, it's what's remaining, so someone has to do a das right now. Well, the father's out of the picture. So that's what we're saying, that we have to have her das.
There's no element that the father may have had that in mind.
Right, well, that's part of the conversation over here. What is the Kidushin? Is the Kidushin, can he even do that for then? And that's what we'll see a little bit on the base regarding how do we qualify the father's monies that he received originally in regards to this future Kidushin that's being happening over here. But that's one approach. Rav Nachman Yitzchak, he actually says, Afilatim, you could even say, no, l'Kidushin nitnu. You could even say that the first monies that were given by the father were for Kidushin. And a ramification of this, Rashi tells us, is that that's really considering selling your daughter for Ishus when you sold her as a Shivcha. Because the first monies are l'Kidushin nitnu, because you know that he might do Yud. And if, let's say, the Adon does Yud and she becomes widows, according to Rabbi Kiva, you cannot sell her as Shivcha anymore, because even if you do Shivcha Sacha Shivcha, you can't do Shivcha Sacha Ishus, and that's considered as Ishus. Because the Yud that the Adon ultimately did was the father's receiving originally when he got the money, when he sold her as a Shivcha. So then the question is, wait a second, if he's saying Ma'is HaRishaynis are l'Kidushin nitnu, so why would you need to have her das now if you already had the father's das originally when she was sold? Because the Gemara is giving an inami over here. The Gemara says, no, Shani Hachir is different. The Torah says, Yada, which is a darshan, the word of Deya. You're right, it's Xeris HaKasav. According to the second approach, really you had the father's acceptance with his das of Kidushin. So why do you need to have it? The Torah says liyada. That's why. So therefore you have to let her know when you're going to do the yud during the slavery. Now it says the Gemara, and this really introduces us to a whole new topic. My Rabbi Yisrael Yehuda. What is this Rabbi Yisrael Yehuda that we had just referenced, that he's of the opinion, and we quoted this on the previous daf too, that the first monies were not given for Kedushin purposes. It's only what's still remaining on the contract. So the Gemara says, the time like Linda Bryson. The pasuk talks about Ya'ada, about doing Yid, and it also talks about Vehefta, about redeeming her. Two words near each other. The pasuk says, if it's bad in the eyes of our master, that to him he should do Yid or doesn't do Yid, however you have with Aleph or Vav, Vehefta, and then redeems her. But that's the pasuk we quoted on the previous stuff. That's the pasuk, these two words near each other. Now, what the pasuk is telling us is that yiyud only applies in the place where there is pediyah, where there's redemption. Meaning that if the father of the girl or the girl they're coming to do, meaning if the master is coming to do yiyud at the end of 6 years, you have to have still some time left in the day. That if you're going to come to calculate how much you could diminish from how much you would have to do the payout, there would still be at least a pruta of payout, that there's still some left of what you would be able to do a pidyon for, so that monies that's still left could be used for the Kidushin money. So as the Bryce explains, you have to have enough time in the day that there will still be enough time for redemption. Oh, kind of Rabbi Yehudi says that teaches us the following lesson. That if there's still time in the day that you can still work from a value of a pruta, then she'll be engaged with the yud. If not, one should be engaged. So, Alma, you see from that, he holds this must mean the first monies, which are already used up already, we're not for Kedushin, because if the father had received the money with the intention of yiyud, and the Kedushin yud would depend on the father, so even if there's not enough time to have any monetary value, but since he's saying within the 6 years, tisyayidli, so then that would be yud l'mafreya from the time of the mechira. From the fact that you have to have still time in the day for pediyah, must mean there must have some money left for the Kedushin now to take effect on. Why do you need Kedushin to take effect now? Kedushin took effect 5 years ago when you sold her as a slave woman. Obviously, Moshe Rishonis would not for Kedushin itnu, and it's now the remaining money now that the Kedushin is happening with right now. This is the opinion of Rabbi Yisrael Yehuda that we mentioned in the previous daf. And then Rabbi Nachman Yitzchak Amar, he was the second opinion that we said. He said, no, afilatema the Kedushin. And remember, he just said a moment ago that Rabbi Yisrael Yehuda is not necessarily holding, like he said, like it's, you could even say the Kedushin itnu. He said, no, afilatema the Kedushin itnu. You could say that, no, it's not true. The first monies were given for Kedushin. So then the question is, if the first monies were given for Kedushin, so then why would you still have to have time in the day for Pediyah even if you had no monetary time left, you still have, it's still within the 6 years and it's still within the slavery period and the first monies were Kedushin. So he says the same thing he said before. With Yada, he says, Shani Hachad Amar Chmona Vehefta. It's different because the Torah says Vehefta, which is comparing it to Yada to Hefta. So it's more like Xeris HaKasim, because the Torah puts it near each other. But you're right. Al Pi Svara, you wouldn't need to have any monetary value. Just like you said before, regarding Ya'ad, you wouldn't need to have her das, because the father's original das should be effective. And the Torah says Liyada. The Torah says Vehefta, that's why. So it's nothing to do with Al Pi Svara. Really, most Rishonis are Kedushin. But, so that's this machlokes that we have. If the Mar is Rishonis were Kedushin Itnu, or will lav Kedushin Itnu. Now, based on this, Amar Rav Nachman, he said we have two interesting halachas that the Gemara wants to compare to this halacha of this machlokes of Rabbi Yisrael Yehuda. Amar Rav Nachman, he says like this: if a person tells his minor daughter, "Si v'kibli kidushayach," go and receive your kedushin. So the Gemara says a person could do that. Why? How do you know that? How do you know that the father can tell his daughter, who doesn't have the rights to Kedushin, he's the one, he's the father, he has the rights, she's a minor, that he could tell her to receive it is Rabbi Yisrael Yehuda. From this halacha, Rabbi Yisrael Yehuda You see this halacha. Where do you see this? Says the Gemara, Lav Amar B'Yisrael, didn't B'Yisrael say, Moi, it's a little bit cheshbon, these two cases the Gemara brings interesting comparison. What did he say? He says the first monies that the father received were not for Kidushin. And when you leave over at least a value of a pruta that's still left on our contract, then we said have a Kidushi. Then we said it's going to be Kidushin without the father. Now, as Rashi Lamed Beis explains, obviously we see that since he sold her and he knows that the Adon could do Yid, so later on, whose das is creating the Kidushin? It's the girl's das, because he's not in that picture anymore. She's going to be accepting the Yid from the Adon. So it's the equivalent of telling her, you be makabel your Kidushin. That's how the Gemara is comparing it, because that's essentially what's happening. He knows that this is going to happen. He's selling her as a maidservant. Her das is ultimately going to make that Yid, because he said liyada, and Rabbi Yehuda says Moishe Lavli Kidushin. So it's the remaining money, the proof that's remaining that she's getting engaged. He's telling her, you go accept your Kidushin. So from Yehuda's halacha, you see this idea that the father could tell his little girl, go receive your Kidushin. That's says the Gemara. Here it's also no different. Without the father, if he tells her to do it, she could accept her Kidushin. Another interesting parallel, says the Gemara, is the following case. Again, Rav Nachman, he says, Hamekadish bin Milva. It's a little bit halt cup, like Taisa explains this case. If someone gets engaged with a loan, sheyesh Allah mashkin. So if, let's say, there's a loan that she owes to him.
We had to finish tomorrow prior.
Yeah.
I said you can't.
So that's Taisus in a moment. Taisus discusses that, and we spoke about that on Daf Chesem Beis. That's what Taisus brings up from that case of Daf on when we spoke about this of Makadish B'Milveh and Hanoi's Milveh. We spoke about this on Daf Chesem Beis. So Taisus is going to address it in a second, but first he says the case is if Hamakadish B'Milvah, someone does Kiddushin with a loan, sheyesh la mashkin, and there's a security that he has. Mukudeshes, she's going to be engaged. Midiris Yehuda. Now, Taisus says that we're talking about. First of all, he explains that the mashkin was there at the time of the loan. It's tam, because of the Gemara on the Chesem Beis. He explains the truth is that even if he doesn't give her back the mashkin, he just pardons her the loan, even though the mashkin is in his hand, this is going to create a Kidushin. As Taisa explains, because if you read the case closely, you'll see the case is called Hamakadish B'Milvah Sheyesh Alo Mashkin. It doesn't say he's doing the Kidushin with the mashkin. He's doing the loan. He's doing the Kidushin with the loan. Now, Taisa says, if you're going to say, since he's been Makadisha with the benefit of the pardoning of the loan, that's Bahanos Milva, if you remember that halacha. So then, even without the mashkin, we already said in Daf Chesem Beis that she's going to be engaged with Hanois Milva. Hanois Milva.
That's not mammon. We said it has to be mammon.
No, that we said it has a monetary value, just like when you give it to a chashuv person.
But we said it has to be actual.
No, it doesn't have to, because we said even if, let's say, the woman gives a chashuv a person, a Rebbe comes along, Rebbe Sha'aynikel, like the pelts, whatever, she gives him a pidyon geld. She's engaged, and she's like received something from him because it's a benefit. It has a monetary benefit. So also we said Hanois Milva, which we said means the pardoning of the loan. We said that it's already Kidushin. So Tais is asking, why do you need a lina from Brisis Halacha, which we can explain in a second how we're getting this interesting parallel from him. But even without a mashkin, it's you can be Makadesh Ba'anos Milva. We said it's enough Chesem Beis. What do we print? So Tais says, actually, interestingly, since there's a mashkin, it's actually worse. That's why you would have thought it doesn't work, and why you need your you to say it does work. Why? You would have thought to say that the woman is not relying on this because since he's not giving her back her security, you would think to say, okay, you're pardoning me the loan, but where's my Jaguar back? Where's my security? I didn't get it back. So you would think to say that she's not confident on the pardoning of the loan, and therefore she would not be mukadeshes. Yes, or regla hanois of milva, which is mechilas. Oh, you're pardoning me the 10,000 that I owe you? Great, and that's a hana, and that's going to be kedushin. But here, where there's a mashkin, you would have thought to say would make it worse. Kamash Malan from Rabbi Yisi's teaching that you are going to be mukadeshes. Now, where do you see this? Now, here's where we go to explain it. Where do you see from Rabbi Yehuda's halacha to prove this halacha of Mekadesh b'milva that has a mashkin, even though he does not give her back the mashkin and just with pardoning the loan that should be engaged? Because lava, Rabbi Yehuda didn't Rabbi Yehuda say, Moisa Rishainas, right? The first monies that the father received from this Adain, when he sold his daughter Zamavriya, he explains, Lav le Kidushin nitnu. They were not given for Kidushin purposes, and the Kidushin is only going to be by the Gerayin, by whatever money is left on her contract, right? So that high halvahi, that makes that into a loan, meaning she owes the master either those monies or its value, which would be her working, whatever it is, but they still owe on the contract a pruta or more. So that's a loan. V'hi gufa herself, the woman, mashkinhi, she's the security for that monies that are owed. Right? I said it's an interesting parallel the Gemara is making. So they continue to Beis, and what are we saying? So if there's still at least a value of a pruta left on this contract, and they do yiyud, have a kedushin with that loan. The Gemara is saying, you see from Yisrael's halacha that hamakadesh bilmova sheyesh mashkin, that is going to be a kedushin, because that's the equivalent of Yehuda's case. The kedushin is with a milva, what's remaining on what you owe, that has a mashkin because she's the mashkin, and even though he doesn't have anything on like her body, the kedushin is still going to work, even though the security is not being given back. Just the mechila of that milva is going to create a kedushin. So that's what the Gemara says. Those are two. You're saying that means to say the security, it's his security, meaning she is his security, and he's not getting back his security because she's staying her own. So he's not getting back the security. That's really similar to the case. She's the security for his loan, right? No, but it's not going back. He has to get back the security. Goes back to the. She owes. Right, they owe the money. They're the borrower, and they owe the money. And she's supposed to get back. They should get back the mashkin. Right, they should get back. Are they considered getting back? She's staying with them.
Yeah, but not as normal.
Right. Right. Yeah. Not a perfect parallel exactly. Right. Right. It is discussed a little bit regarding owning her body. Lamaisa, he still owns her body. Right. He still owns her. It's different. Right. Question has to be perfect also, or just teach us the concept of the construct that you could have such a case, because not really. Right. So now the Gemara continues, related back to the previous teachings of Yud. So how does this work? How does one do Yud? So he tells them from the two people, you have to have Edom, you're doing a Kidushin. that Hariat Mikudeshesli, either he used the classic terminology, you are engaged to me, Hariat Moresesli, you're betrothed to me, and this Afilu B'Seif Sheish. Even at the end of the 6 years, meaning the last day when she was going to go free, even as right before the sun is setting. He treats her the way you do with a regular wife, and he doesn't treat her anymore as a maidservant. That's the Tana Kama. Which we mentioned Amid Aleph, this is that same Rabbi Yehuda. He says, wait a second, not so simple. You can't do it right before Shkia. If there's enough time during the daytime that you could go ahead and do that there's still a value of a pruta of work that is owed, then she's engaged. From love, if not, in the Mekudeshes, she's not engaged like we explained, because it has to be the monies that's still now that's going to create Kidushin, because he holds Moisir Rishonis Lav the Kidushin. Now the Gemara gets a little bit tedious over here, only because of explaining what the words are trying to say. But the Gemara says like this.
Could be a lot of time. The says
yeah, but he means to say like a minute before Shkia.
Right,
but that's his point. His point is, yeah, you're right. Samach could mean, a half hour before,
So the Sefer asking on Reisha without clarity on what Samach the Shkia is kind of
right. I mean, right, but the Bryce is quoting it. It seems evident that is their machlekes, that they're trying to say that point. Yeah, if a woman doing bedika, she has to do samach l'shkia. That means a half hour, doesn't mean like 30 seconds before. But so the Bryce says mashal. In other words, from here you learn lo isha. Someone says to a woman, I want you to be engaged to me from now for after 30 days. Okay, so it's from now for after 30 days. A different guy comes along during the 30 days, and he engages her. And from here you see that she's engaged to the first one, because this is what he's telling her. Now we're going to start, if I want to, after 30 days. That's what you see from this. Wait, the Gemara says, wait a second. Mashallah. In other words, from whose words we brought a machlekes tanoim? From whose words are you learning out this concept of that if you say, hey, I want it for now to take effect later, that the Kidushin is going to be with the first one, not with the second guy. If you think to say that we learn this out from Rabbi Yehuda's teaching, what do you mean? To the contrary. He says, if there's enough time during the daytime that you do a pruta's worth of work, engage. And we said if not loy, it's not going to be so. Like Rashi explains the Gemara's question. Obviously, it's now that the Kidushin is taking effect with the remaining money that's still left. So how could you say that you would learn that from here that if the first guy said I want the Kidushin me achshav ula'achar shleishim yoim, that means to say it's taking effect right now, and the second guy's Kidushin not going to take effect. You don't see Rabbi Yehuda. If anything, Rabbi Yehuda the opposite. See Rabbi Yehuda is taking effect later, not now. So the Gemara says, you're right. Amar Rabbi Rabbi says a mashal l'Rabbanan. It's from the words of the Chacham that we learn out that they say that even when there is no time, because they hold that the monies that were originally given is what creates the Kidushin. So therefore, if you want to do a yud, you can do a yud from right now, from the original kinyan, because it's not then that it's taking effect. It was from originally that it took effect. Oh, okay. So according to that, obviously that's the halacha you're saying from now for then. That's later on that you're going to do it, but even if someone comes in between, he can't come in because your Kidushin is taking effect retroactive from the beginning. So the Gemara says, Pshita, well, if that's where you're going, like that's obvious that you can learn that out. What's even the Chiddush? The Gemara says, no, Madrima would you say, Holoi Omale, but the father didn't tell the Adon Me Achshav from now to learn out from there, that even if he did, in other words, the Gemara's question is, learn out from the halacha of Yiyud, that even if the person did not specify Me Achshav, let's say a guy just said, that she should be engaged to the first person, because that's what happened with the father. Kamash Mulan, that the Tana is telling us that what you learn out from the words Rabbanan is only if you say Me'achshav, then yes, but if not, not. Because the father doesn't have to say it. That's evident. The father is receiving the money, the moisture shines the Kidushin, but it's going to be when the other decides to yield. But it's working retroactive from when the father took the money, so it's like me'achshav. But in general, if you just say, here, I want you to take the money to be engaged to me after 30 days, and someone else comes along in day 15 and gives a Kidushin, she'll be engaged to the second guy, not to the first guy. That's what we needed to tell you, mashal, that we're learning out from this halacha, but that you have to say ma'achshav. Without ma'achshav, it wouldn't be anything. Now, Tani, we learn another brisa that also has the same mashal, but also the same machlekes, that hamoicher is biter. Someone sells his daughter. And he goes, after he sold his daughter as a slave woman, he goes and he accepts Kidushin from another man. So sichik ba'adain u'makadeshas l'sheni. So the first Tana holds, he could laugh at the master and she'll be engaged to the second guy, Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. And obviously we know Rabbi Yehuda's opinion because he holds Moris Rishainis were lavla Kidushin nitnu. So she's not engaged to the first guy. He can engage his daughter to the second guy. They say, no, not true. If the other wants to do yid, he could do yid, and she won't be engaged to the second guy, she'll be engaged to the first guy, because like we know they hold Moishe Shines for the Kidushin. So that's retroactive. That was already engaged to the Adin already. Which muscle, in other words, from here you learn out, someone says to a woman, if you're engaged to me for after 30 days from now, and then someone else comes engaged her within the 30 days, she's engaged to the second guy. So the Gemara says, wait a second, mashal laman. From whose words do we learn that this halacha? Everything is going to Rabbanan. What do you mean? Rabbanan say not like that. They say if the other wants to do yid, he could do yid, and she will not be engaged to the second guy. So what are you saying from here? You learn out that she'll be engaged to the second guy. It says no. It means mashal Yehuda, that because you didn't say me'achshav, even though he could do Kidushin at a later point in time, when someone else comes in beforehand, it's going to be a Kidushin. So here also is no difference when you don't say me'achshav, just like by a yiyud, which is going to be only taking effect later time, someone else could jump in beforehand. So you must have pshita. That's obvious that you could see that from Yisrael. Says no, what would you say? He didn't tell her when they gave her the monies, la'achar shleishim yom, for after 30 days, that, in other words, that there should be, you could be able to do yid at a later point in time. And therefore, Rabbi Yehuda says she'll be engaged to the second guy. But where the man says, be engaged to me for after 30 days, even though he didn't say me'achshav, maybe you would say it does take effect right now, and she would be engaged to the first person if he wants to at the end of 30 days. That's why we have to tell you that no, they are similar, because since the pasuk is saying that yud is dependent on these monies at a later point in time, so originally when he gave it to him, he gave it for that understanding that he'll be able to do a Kidushin at a later point in time, that if he wants to do yid, he can do yid. And even so, since he didn't say me'achshav, she will be engaged to the second person, because it's not taking effect retroactive, because Moishe lovely Kidushin, although that you know that you could end up doing with those monies. So therefore, that's exactly what we're saying. You learn from Yisrael Yehuda that she'll be engaged to the second guy if he didn't say me'achshav, but not to the first guy. Tani to learn another brayso, so continue on these halachas. Now, past that machlekes Rabbi Yehuda that we just had regarding Mois Rishainis, is another machlekes. Hamecher is bita. If someone sells his daughter, upasak amanash lo liyayid, and he made up, he says, look, I'm selling my daughter as a maidservant, Nebuch, our family needs parnasa, but when it comes to shidduchim, I don't want just you being able to marry her, you cannot do yid. So the first opinion says, Niskayma tonight. The Rebbe says, okay, the stipulation is effective, he could sell as a maidservant, but she will not be able to be married by the other. The sages disagree. They say, if the other wants to do yid, he could do yid, even though this was the t'nai in the mechira, because he's stipulating against what it says explicitly in the Torah. The Torah says that he could do yid, and whoever stipulates against what the Torah says, his condition is going to be null and void. That's a machlekes. However, the Gemara asks, well, is that really so? According to Meir, that the stipulation is going to be effective, and that is, the Adam will not be able to do yid, even though it's masna mashakaz b'dayah. But in the brayso that says, someone says to a woman, hey, you're engaged to me, on the condition that you don't have on me, I don't want to have to provide you clothing, I don't have to provide you food, I don't want to have to give you marital intimacy. Let's get married, but I'm not going to provide you, I don't want to have responsibility in any of these things. So the halacha is, she is engaged, B'tunoi batal. And you know what? The stipulation is null and void. You have to give a share, you have to give a ksus, you have to give her aina divrei meir. That's a meir. Why? Because the Torah says you have to. You can't make conditions against what the Torah says. So even though you made up tonight, nice batal. The problem is, this is Remeir. We just quoted a moment ago Remeir who says that you could stipulate against what the Torah says, and here he's saying no. Now, just to finish the brisa, he says, no, since it's bedavar shebamammon, whichever one is monetary, let's say regarding clothing and food, which you could be moichel, so that actually there tonight time your stipulation will be valid. But oina, marital intimacy, which is physical pain, that's not something you could be moichel. It's not davar shebamammon, so that he would be obligated. But the other two he holds that you would be able to be moichel, and he wouldn't be obligated. But the one thing is, we see a steer in Reb Meir. So Mechizki says, Shani hacha. Here by Yid is different. Why? You're right. Generally, you cannot be master. You cannot stipulate against what the Torah says. So how over here could he say that I want to sell her as a maidservant without Yid? Because the Amakra, the pasuk says in Shemais, it says if a man's going to sell his daughter la'ama for a maidservant. What do you mean for a maidservant? Of course he's selling her for a maidservant. What else do you mean you're selling her for? It's coming to tell you that sometimes she'll be only sold as a maidservant, meaning, and not for Yid. So the pasuk is clearly telling us, according to a mayor, an exclusion to the rule. That here you could sell her even without Yid. But then the question is, V'Rabbanan, that they hold you cannot stipulate to have the mechira without Yid. So Hay La'ama Ma'i Abdilay, what do they do with La'ama? They're obviously not learning out that you could be sold without Yid because they hold that you need Yid. Says the Gemara, they need it, as we learned in the following brisa. The brisa darshans this word, La'ama. It says that if a man's going to sell his daughter as a maidservant, this teaches us that the father could sell his daughter even to those that are invalid for intimacy. A mamzer, a nasin, that you now do yid, and she only will be sold to them from slavery. The pasuk la'am is teaching you an extra word to teach you that she could be sold as a maidservant even to those that are apostle, even to a mamzer.
Yeah, because they can't do.
Right.
In fact, he probably has to stipulate now.
So he's not stipulating. He doesn't have to stipulate.
What she is.
No, in other words, a tanai they hold. You cannot make a tanai against what the Torah says. Torah says you can't make a tanai. What is la'ama teaching us? That you sometimes could be sold just as for amma, not for yid, not because you can make a tanai, but partially because it's a case that they won't be able to do yid. It's the aser, the Torah is up as their apostle. That's the case of what la'ama is coming to include. So the question, however, on the Rabbanan is, wait a second. But a Kavochem would tell us without the need for a Gzeir Zakas of La'ama to teach us this halacha, because im mekach, this is the following Kavochem. Im mekach lebsulim, if the father could get her engaged to a mamzer, to a nasan, because they're only chival aven. Kidushin is teifis. Kidushin takes effect in the negative prohibition in the Torah. So you think, why he won't be able to sell it to apostle? If even Kidushin he could do, for sure he could do with mechira. So why do we need a pasuk la'ama to tell me that he could sell her to a mamzer, which can't do yid because of Kidushin, but even Kidushin he could even do for apostle. So on that the Gemara says, no, that's not difficult, because don't bring me a raya. In other words, don't provoke me by telling me, oh, what do you mean? The father could even get her engaged to apostle, because we find by Kidushin that he has the ability to do things even more than that. What do you mean? What do you mean? You can't learn that from Kidushin to Mechira, because Kidushin he has more liberty than Mechira. Where do you find that? A father could get his daughter engaged even if she's already 12 when she's a Nara, even when she brought Simanim, pubic hairs. He can make her engaged, as the Gemara learned in Daf Dalma based from Yotzachin and Kosef. Oh, so who said Yim Karena Lebsulim? Who said that you could sell it to those that are apostle? But there the Mechir is not so much, he doesn't have so much latitude like by Kedushin, because he cannot sell her when she's a Naira, as we already learned a Kabbalah Chaimer, and the Gemara in Erechin of Ein Chavtes Beis, if she's even sold, she goes out when she's a Naira. Now when she's not sold, for sure he cannot sell her when she's a Naira. So you would not know from Mekach Lebsulim to Mechil Lebsulim, because by Kedushin you see he has more latitude. He could even be Mekadosh when she's a Naira. Mechir you cannot do when she's a Naira. So who said maybe you could be Mekadosh Lebsulim, but you'd not be able to do Mechir Lebsulim? That's why you needed to have La'ama to tell you Malamet Shemech Lebsulim that yes, he could sell her to Pesulim. That's what the Rabbanu used with the word La'ama. Now, Rabbi Eliezer, once we're bringing this brisa, Rabbi Eliezer says that no, it's not true. If it's coming to teach me that you can go ahead and sell it to Psulim. Already says in the pasuk, what does that mean if it's bad in the eyes of a master and therefore he's not doing yud? It means because it's bad in her marriage, meaning that she's forbidden to him. But still Kedushin would take effect, as it says, that in other words that he's not doing, but it is possible for Kedushin to take effect. From here you learn out that you could sell her to Psulim. So he says, from here you see already that he could be sold to her, because he can't do yid. It's Rabbein Adinah, it's a Rabbein Esahu. They wouldn't be able to get married. But we see that she's his slave. So then Matam La'ama, according to Rabbi Eliezer, I don't need La'ama to teach you Mechir L'Psulim, because I already see it in the pasuk in Rabbein Neha that the marriage would be forbidden, which is a puzzle. So what am I teaching from La'ama? La'ama teaches me something else according to Rabbi Eliezer. It teaches me Shemachra, as we continue to Tabach Chav Man Aleph, L'Kroivim, that he could sell her to relatives, where even though there's no yid, because their Kedushin wouldn't be typhus. In other words, we would see by someone that Kedushin would be typhus, it's just bad in God's eyes. But here, Kedushin would not be typhus at all. That's what we're teaching you from La'ama, to teach you that even over there, he could sell her, even to relatives, where Kedushin would not be typhus at all. So on that, the Gemara says, what do you mean? Why do I need to have it from a pasuk of La'ama? That also I would know from a Kabbalah Chaimer. But I didn't. If he could sell her to those are mamzer and nasan, he can't sell it to his relative, to the uncle, whatever. Says the Gemara, no, because I can't prove from the fact that you could sell it to someone who's puzzle is because if he would want to do yid, even though it's a isser, but you could do yid because Kidushin is teivas achiv alavin. Whereas who said you could sell it to relatives? If you want to do yid, you can't do yid because there is a chiva misa, which the Kidushin doesn't take effect. Therefore, Amakrai needed to have a special pasuk la'ama to teach you that even malamet shemachal likrayim, you can even sell her to relatives, even though there's no Kidushin that take effect at all. Still, you could do the mechira. Now, the Gemara explains that the Meir, he darshans this word of la'ama when you make a condition stipulating that you're not going to do yiyud. That was the machlikis that we mentioned before, that according to a Meir, that's what you learn that from la'ama. And we said, Master Mashakar Torah says, no, that's what the Torah is teaching with the word la'ama, that you can make a t'nai, that Kedushin, that I'm doing the mechira amanas, that there won't be and the yid. So l'psulim. So remember, we used three things from this word la'ama. That's what the Gemara is concluding now. We had Meir said la'ama teaches you this halacha of that you can make a t'nai that I don't want yid. It's only going to be for mechira of la'ama. Then we had a second teaching of la'ama malamet shemacha l'psulim. And we have Rabbi Eliezer who said, no, that I know from Rabbein Adinah. I already know psulim. It's teaching me a third thing, which doesn't even have Kidushin at all to be able to be typhus. Even over there, even there, even though you cannot possibly do yid, even be'isser, still there can be a mechira. So we have three teachings. So now Remeir, who already used it for the halacha that you can make a tanai, says Gemara, how does he know these other teachings? How does he know l'psulim? How does he know l'krayvim? He already used la'ama for tanai. Says the Gemara l'psulim that you could sell her to those who are apostle nafkalei mechad nafkalei Rebelezer. He learns out how Rebelezer knows it from la'ama. That you see that from imra be'en adineha shelo be'nise'eha that you see you could sell it to psulim. And b'krayvim, what does he do with relatives? Oh, savala k'rabanan. He actually holds like the Rabbanan that we said on Daf Yomi Beis, that they hold, they say, that you cannot sell it to relatives. So Remeir is good, because he learns that his halacha from La'ama, which is that you can make it tonight that you don't want to use. He learns that the halacha Mochel B'sulim from Imro Bein Adinah, and in your head he holds you cannot sell it to relatives. So we don't have a source for that. Now, the Gemara finishes off by saying, Tana Chada, we learned in one brisa, Mochla Aviv, a Mochla B'nai. You could sell her to his father, and you cannot sell her to his son. Another brisa, you cannot sell her loyla aviv, not to his father, because she's forbidden to him because of bas benoi, it's his son's daughter, and loyla benoi, and not to his son because that's his sister, and Kidushin is not teifer, so he decreases. The Gemara says later on. So we have two different brises. One saying that you could sell her to his father, meaning the father could sell his daughter to his father, but not to his son. And one says, no, not to either one. So the Gemara says, we understand the brise that says you cannot sell her not to his father, not to his son, is kirabanan, which says that you cannot sell her to any relatives. And obviously, her grandfather or her brother are relatives. But the brise that says you could sell her to his father, which is her grandfather, you cannot sell her to his son. Come on, who's that like? It's not like either one of them. Because one holds you could sell to relative, one holds you cannot. What's this split that you could sell to the grandfather relative, but not to the brother relative? It's going like Rabbanan, that hold that you can't sell to a relative. But the Rabbanan agree when there is an element of yid, meaning, as Rashi explains, when you sell your daughter to your father, and that father, meaning the Zaida, has a son, his son could do yid, because that's the halacha that the Lord himself or his son could do yid, which that's bas achiv. That's going to be the uncle. An uncle is allowed to marry his niece. But when you sell your daughter to your son, there's no element of yid, not for your son and not for your son's son, because that's going to be achais aviv. That's going to be his father's sister, which is forbidden. So therefore, it's specifically regarding his av that he can do a mechira, even according to Rabbanan, because there is a tzad yid over there, and therefore it's going to be a vel mechira. Thank you for any time.